Hey, welcome to Lab the podcast. I'm grateful to share some time with my friend and artist, David Zvonar. David is a creative media professional passionate about storytelling through photography, videography, and marketing. He's served the church since he was a kid and been involved in media work since 2015. He's currently leading a marketing team for an agency while actively working towards fully dedicating himself to documenting what God is doing around the world. His passion is to capture these stories through impactful documentary films and media that inspire and encourage others. I met David through Ecstasis's network of artists when he partnered with us to photograph the making of Sehnsucht Symphony in Brno last fall. So, David, good to see you again. It's been a minute since we've been together in person or on Zoom, so it's good to see you again.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it's
Um,
so fun the way. First of all, to everybody who's listening, it's listener supported radio. But if we got all of our partners together, we'd try to hire you to because you want to travel the world telling what God is doing and pointing to it and making films. It's kind of like in our sweet spot, and that's how we met. Because these cool projects that God is opening doors for have now taken us beyond the borders of the United States, and
yeah,
we met you through Connor Sweetman, as I mentioned, with Ecstasis. Without him, we would not know each other. He put out a call to artists so that we could find someone to document from a photography standpoint the Sehnsucht Symphony. Why did, first of all, why did you respond to that? I mean, Connor literally just put out a notice in the universe and you said yes. What was it that piqued your interest or made you want to be a part of that project?
right. Great question. So actually, I knew about ecstasis kind of from the Christian talk. I didn't know much about it, but I heard about the project. And then I was in London taking photos for a Christian event called Descent. And then through that, I met another friend. And then she has actually sent me the story from Connor. And I was like, well, you're looking photographer. This looks cool, something Christian project. I live nearby. Why not? And I looked at the website. It's like, hey, these guys are the real deal. They don't talk. They don't just talk about it. They actually do it.
Wow.
So for that was for me kind of like I can be a part of this. Sick. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's so interesting, like those little connections and little threads. I think that's one of the things that makes us most excited about Lab, the podcast. We're like in our 200th some episode now. And we've just been able to have so many amazing conversations with people around the world. And we always say that their life kind of puts on display the life and beauty of the gospel, their life and their work does. And that's certainly true for you. We were looking for a specific thing in a photographer because this project, it has different layers. And I remember you were kind enough to walk around in Prague with us. You like literally met us on the street and we had our first meeting about what this
Yeah.
project is and the scope of it. Literally just walking the streets of Prague, and you were kind enough to help us avoid some areas that we should avoid and get to our train. But along the way, I said, we need somebody who can capture two things: the people side and really do some photojournalism to tell the story of the people that were involved in that project, as well as trying to capture the scope of something that big. I've never been a part of anything that big with 96 professional musicians. It was massive. So we needed somebody with a particular eye, an artistic gift, but also the ability to work all of those different angles. So we were impressed by your work with your eye, and we'll talk a little bit about the creative side. But how did you find your way to photography? Because you were clearly the best choice that God brought for this project. It was amazing. Your work was amazing. How did you find your way to photography and that become your medium?
Oh, that is a good question. So I started taking photos on like my Windows phone, or like I just liked capturing something pretty and putting it up. Like, started as a kid. I was probably 12. And I always liked videos and time lapse. I was the IT kid. But then I think photography specifically, it was for me a way to cheesy way to say it, but it is a way to express yourself, right? And I remember I bought my first camera. I was like, hey, I can be creative. I had some time because I was still in school. I was playing with Photoshop. I was like, I was inspired. I'll just say I was inspired by what I saw. whether that was nature or the internet, and then I wanted to replicate that. So that was for me the big first step, and then obviously you get into an event and you want to capture photos, take photos of that. Maybe you're in the nature, you want to take a few photos there, and just over the years, I started to accumulate photos. So yeah.
Yeah. It was when I was reading your bio, I was like, man, 2015 to 2025, that's a decade of your life. And it probably went by, it feels like so much time goes by so fast. For you, if you go back to not just 2020 or 2015, but early on childhood, it said, you said you grew up in the church, serving in the church. Did you have a creative gift, an artistic gift, even growing up as a kid, or did that develop later?
Um, I would say, well, if you talk about building houses in Minecraft, then that would be creative gift. No, I would say actually now looking back, I would say my biggest creative era was actually kind of 2015 till 2020. Is that's when I was like, I just had the passion and I had no real like agenda behind it. I just wanted to do something cool and creative. And I felt like, hey, and God loves this. God loves me being creative. God wants to use that for his glory. So I remember I was making like creative posts, like just put a quote, Christian quote into that, or maybe a verse with that. For me, that was the most creative years. And now when I'm getting older and I get, you know, adult and there's tasks and there's, responsibilities, that's when the creativity in a way fades away, unfortunately. And it's more of a, hey, I know there's creativity in me, but now it's more intentional actually to let it out. And you have to take time.
I want to pull on a thread that you said there because you said that you knew that God wanted you to use that gift and that He had
Yeah.
given it to you, that He wanted you to use it. What made you have confidence that that was true?
I think part of that is that not many people were doing it, and it would just felt natural to me. And so it was just it was me. It was not I was not trying to be someone else. Yes, I was inspired by maybe some people, but it always spoke to me personally. Like I was genuinely encountering the Lord through either watching those things, seeing those things, or creating them myself. And so for me, it was truly like I felt the most alive whenever I would be doing this.
Hmm. I love that. There's that great quote, like, you feel most alive running or whatever it is, the gift that God has given you.
Mhm.
And did you grow up in a home? I mean, you talk about serving in the church as a kid. Did you grow up in an atmosphere around faith that saw creativity and art and artists as a part of the expression of God's life and beauty in the world, or was that something that kind of you discovered later in life?
No, my none of the no one in my family, English is not my first language. Uh, no one in my family is like a creative or musician or artist. I was the odd man out. So I wouldn't say even in my church, I was kind of with what I could. I was serving with the books. So I was actually making like the layouts for the books. We were translating books from English to Czech, and then I would be the guy kind of doing the graphics and everything. Um, it was always there was no one around me, so I had to really pull on the inspiration that I found on the internet. I'll be honest, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they may not have given you the creative gift. That may not be from your family of origin. But the other thing that I noticed when we first met and then over our time in Brno is you are a deeply kind person. Like there's a kindness about you and a genuine love that comes from you that struck not just me, but other people on our team. People were moved by just who you are as a person. Who do you think shaped you the most in your life of faith and embodying it in that way? There's this beautiful scripture in John's gospel that talks about, hey, they'll know you're my disciples by the way you love one another, and that it's this defining mark. And here we are, we're from different countries, different parts of the world. I'm quite a bit shorter than you are. We meet in Prague and we have all these differences. and yet there's this deep common connection. And a part of it is that love of God that is just obvious in your life. Who do you think tended and nurtured that part of you to where it matured to the point that some random people from America would see it first thing when we met you?
Oh, wow, that is a good compliment. First of all, thank you. But I mean, a part of the Word and the Lord, spending time with Him. Um, how that is a. I think I always kind of knew that you gotta go be well with people, and then uh, I would say a big part of that also would be in 2015 is actually when I lost a friend, and that kind of made me have a reality check through of, hey, who do I actually want to be known for? You know, then all the projects, all the ministry that faded away, and I was just like, hey, I need to check with my heart first that I care about the people. So that was definitely a defining moment, I would say. And then I would also say just generally some teachings and podcasts kind of made me realize, hey, you know, it is good to be kind. It is good to serve one another and have a servant-hearted heart. Um, so yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, I love that that was even that you were curious and intentional about pursuing that. And sometimes it takes those crux moments, difficult moments, tragedy or loss will open up a part of our imagination to ask those big questions of, when life turns, like what are the most meaningful things about this life and how do I want to be remembered? What do I want to be giving myself to? And it's growing up in many people don't have like a even imagination about the Czech Republic. When we told people we were going to the Czech Republic, there's a Prague stands out in people's minds. They know of Prague, but take us back to your neighborhood growing up. Like, just give us a little bit of context for growing up in the Czech Republic and what it was like for you as a kid, and then give us some perspective today. Like, that's home for you, and it's a part of the world that we may not have a lot of view on. So, just help us have a little bit of context and imagine where you're at and where you came up.
So where I grew up is it's actually a town near Prague. Grew up like next to that town, Pilsen, in a small village. Uh, and back then we didn't really have that much internet. So I think back then it was even more different now compared to the rest of the world, you could say. Or at least that's how I see it now living in the capital in Prague. Czech, it is the most, I like to say it, the most Western Eastern Europe. So as
Mm,
there's still like the post-communism mentality quite a lot. Still the economy is not the greatest. I mean, it's getting better. There's obviously some good businesses and there's good opportunities coming up. But like my parents, I remember my grandfather always just being bitter and complaining about the communism era. And right in a way, rightfully so. It's just a lot of that is still the bitterness was there, not in a healthy way. I would say now it's changing a bit more um, towards the West Europe, you could say, in the way of the rush and the way that you got to follow you got to get a good job, got to get a good degree, and then and then like get a good salary, and you want to make it in life. That's the priority. Um, I don't know. And now, obviously, Prague is being very international city. So now, for me, I know I'm home. And at the same time, Prague is very much connected. I go to international speaking church now. Uh, so Prague is quite different from the rest of the Czech Republic, I would say, in the way of the world, uh, how it would like connect.
yeah.
I hope that answers the
No,
question.
no, it's a great way to say it. And it's interesting the way that you framed that it's the most western part of Eastern Europe, and that it's changing to become much more progress focused, or kind of that same push that you feel in the West. I think this is true for all of our team. When we got to Brno, we like took a deep breath and we loved it. The walkability, the size and density of Brno, the beauty of Brno. It was really it was really refreshing, I think. And there was a slowness to that area that I think
Yeah,
was refreshing to all of us. So it's interesting to hear you say that there's a push almost to change and to kind of jump into that jet stream. And so many of us who are caught in that jet stream went over there and we were like, oh man, please, like, take us back 1,000 years to the doorsteps of this church and let us just take a breath. It was really beautiful.
yeah.
Growing up around, I was struck by the beauty. I mean, it's beautiful. Brno was beautiful. Prague was beautiful. Lots of architecture. You captured a ton of that in your photography. You were great at shooting the buildings as well as the people. But it's a beautiful architectural city, both of them. And I was struck by the cathedrals. I was struck by some of the statues. I think, is it the St. Charles Bridge in Prague, or St. John's Bridge?
It would be, ooh, well, the bridge would be the Carl's Bridge, but right
Okay.
next to it is the Saint Matthew Basilica, I believe.
Okay. That bridge that had all of the statues across it, as we crossed that bridge, I was just struck by, you had the cathedral in the background, you had the statues lining that. Riley's going to look it up and fact check that, which is really good. But it was beautiful. Were you aware of all that beauty growing up? That's one of the things that we were most curious to hear from you is, did you even notice it? Were you aware of how beautiful it was? Or again, did it take leaving and going back for you to realize how much just architectural beauty you were surrounded by?
Right. I would say, so kind of the story is, as you mentioned, I left the country for like about 6 years. I was mostly abroad in the States and in Switzerland, and then coming back home in a way. I do think now I recognize it more than ever, kind of the architecture and the whole feel, and as you were mentioning, kind of the way that the city is a bit slower than maybe what you would see in the West. I don't want to generalize, but I genuinely do think that is the case. Um, I would say growing up, that was my walk to school, you know. So I would see in Pilsen we also have a big church, and for me, I just kind of grew up around it. But now moving to Prague, I can see the history, and that makes me appreciate it way more now, I would say, than when I was younger.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's the case. We just take it for granted. That's even true here in Florida, where and every place is like that. The beauty that we're surrounded by becomes really normal, part of our day to day, and we forget how striking it is. But if you have time to go over there and you spend time, you start to see glimpses of architecture that points beyond itself, statues that point beyond themselves, and there was quite a bit of attention paid to accenting buildings and statues with gold. And there's even it's the Golden City, known for that quality. And there's that hint of the divine everywhere. So it feels a bit more enchanted and a bit more charged with something wondrous and mysterious in that area. How do you, maybe, what's the most favorite place between Prague and Brno for you to shoot? The area of that part of the world where you just go, the buildings, the people, the landscape, it's truly beautiful.
The favorite place? Oh wow, that is a so I would say this is not the most Christian answer, but I love the Prague Castle. Um, the whole. I don't know if you've been there actually on Prague, but when you walk through there in the Prague Castle, kind of from the beginning to the last end, um, obviously I admire the cathedral, but what I admire is kind of the history of the country actually. So for me, coming back is like I actually see, the what God has done and how much He's stewarded the country. So I would say that is for me what I focus on the most is the history. Um but also with that goes that reminds me of the music of the country. So I love, for example, the Czech composers. So me kind of around the 2015 as well, I started to take up some music lessons. Um And I loved listening to like Antonin Dvorak or Bedřich Smetana, and just kind of knowing that they grew up in the same place as I did. You know, the humoresque OP7. You know how it starts kind of in the. I don't want to sing it because I would ruin it. But I was shocked that it was inspired by the way that the train tracks would sound when the composer was on the train. You know,
Mm,
that for me is the heritage that the country has for sure.
yeah. You feel it when you're every turn you make, there's a deep and rich history in every part of the world, but over there, I mean, it just you're standing on layer of layer of layer of history, and it's really really remarkable. I asked kind of what was it that you found beautiful, or what area, in part because I love from artists to just find from them, what do you think makes something beautiful? We talk a lot about it being objective and subjective, that there's both elements of that. But just for you personally as an artist, when you think about the things that you're shooting, whether they're people, landscapes, architecture, moments, what are you looking for? And then how do you know that moment of beauty when you see it?
Ooh. Uh, I would say for me, it is the stories, obviously, in the people. So that's why I like kind of getting into conversations. My favorite conversations are one-on-one when I get to hear their story, their testimony. For me, that is beautiful for sure. And that's why, in a way, I like also video more sometimes. Actually, I like photo and video the same, but if I could choose, I would choose video because you can tell a story through that. In a way, it's a bit easier, and you can have the person speak, or sorry, um, or just kind of, you know, it's a time, it's a frame in time video. So that for me is just amazing. Um, and actually, I don't know if you've what I love is I love heights. So for me, that is beautiful. Whatever like shows you that you're just a man on earth, and that there is a God above you, and you're not just, you know, looking down on the ground where you can actually look up. I love those things. So I love taking drone photography as well, because you can see, hey, this, you know, it takes another perspective on the things.
It's that look up is something that I saw in your photography, that you would capture from different angles, whether it was even shooting Constantine, our composer and conductor. You intentionally got low a couple times to shoot in ways that showed not just the composer, but the building and what was beyond the building. It felt like it was lifting your vision up, and beautifully beautifully done. What do you enjoy the most, just as an artist? Like, I'm thinking about the Sehnsucht project, and you basically got to jump in, learn the stories, talk to the people on the team, and go through every part of that with us. What's
Mhm.
the most enjoyable part as an artist for you, when you are left alone and you get to be in those buildings and just shooting? Or do you like to be immersed with all the busyness and the people side? Like, what is it where your creativity just kind of comes alive?
Mhm. I would say making kind of the mundane look good. That's kind of the
Mm,
simple answer. And that takes some effort, you know. You cannot just, because you've seen your, like, if you're on a vacation with your, imagine you're on a vacation, your family, and your mom takes a picture of you. It's gonna be a picture to imagine, like it's just gonna be iPhone, bad framing. Yeah, you can see that you were on the beach, but how, what is that good for you except a memory? I love memories, so for me, my memories, they don't have to look good at all. They're on my iPhone, that's for me to look back in 20 years, you know. But if I want to show it to others, it also has to look good. For me, I love kind of, I think there were some moments when we were recording, and there were just like conversations happening. How can you make a conversation look insane, you know? And that takes sometimes framing, to sometimes that takes patience to like wait for the right moment. I enjoyed that quite a lot. And just as you were mentioning, for example, in the action, in when Constantine was what is the right word? My English. Leading the orchestra, you know, capture
conducting?
that
Yeah.
emotion. Yeah, conducting. Thank you. Uh, that moment, catch that moment, and kind of freeze that in time and say like this is, then you can kind of think of the rest of what was happening. So documentary is also what I love.
Yeah. It's you have an eye for that. There was one, I think one of my favorite pictures from that entire experience was you took a picture of our good friend and legal counsel John White. He was there and he's standing right beneath a light, a solitary light, and you captured him. He's like reviewing documents or something. And it was something about that mundane or ordinary moment that you caught in a way that you felt the significance of what he was looking at and what he was stewarding in that moment. I love that about what you were able to do. And eventually, we're going to get to share these images. People are going to get to see these things that are kind of the behind the scenes story of what went on to make that and bring that symphony to be. I'm curious for you. Uh, did what impact did the symphony have on you as somebody who came in? You didn't really know the story behind it. You had jumped in late kind of to the project, but then you got to be in there for a couple days listening to the rehearsal, being in there. What impact did it have on you just hearing the symphony come alive?
Oh, wow, what impact it had. I think I was just inspired by you and the team. That would I would say is kind of the biggest takeaway. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, actually, you guys have actually done it. I've unfortunately, like in a way, it also in the Christian realm, sometimes people have visions, but they are not able to lead the team to actually come that vision alive. So for me, that was like kind of, hey, actually, they've done. And I remembered there were some last minute changes as well during the recording, right? During the days, and you just kind of making a decision and calling the shot and kind of discussing with the team and praying, hey, what should we do? We have a problem. How do we fix it? Um, that was also like, I think the leadership is what I have become to appreciate more and more. Is it takes a team to make a dream work,
Mm,
and without a team, it's gonna be hard. If you don't know
yeah,
how to lead a team, it's gonna be hard, So
yeah. Yeah, I'm with you that the part of the remarkable part of that project, if you think about it, from it was really God's idea to make the symphony, that he gets all the credit, and the symphony exists literally to point to him and I mean, Sehnsucht is this inconsolable longing, this ache for something that you cannot satisfy in this world. And so the whole story of Sehnsucht Symphony is pointing beyond itself and saying there's something in us that is restless, to quote Augustine, until we find our rest in thee. That's the piece of music. And amazing that a piece of music like that can be made today. So kudos to Constantine. But when you widen it out and you go, well, it didn't just take Constantine, it took Mikkel and Yaroslav and 96 different musicians and legal counsel and all the hospitality to put that team up in a city. And then you have producers and you have photographers. And I mean, I'm with you that it's inspiring to see things like this come to pass that point beyond themselves. And I think that's part of what we're so excited about with the project. I'm going to let you jump in
and
because
isn't
that
it
I agree.
amazing? Is it amazing how it takes, the way I see myself, I'm not the artist, I am a photographer, or in a way I am an artist through photography, but how it takes, for example, when I was traveling with the band, it takes kind of the both sides, it takes teamwork to really make it happen. That's why sometimes, when the artist, when I was on the train from France to Switzerland one day, I met someone she's a manager to a cellist, and the
Mm,
cellist who loves her craft. So the cellist is really good at the job of, playing and compose and making the music sound good and practicing the craft. And then she can hire and work with someone who manages the rest of the things. How it's teamwork of administrative tasks and the artist needs the admins, and the admins need the artists. Uh, I love this, and I was thinking some one days like, hey, should I be a manager to a band, or that makes me excited because I see the talent and I want to show the world the talent. Um, and there's God has made us different for a reason.
Mm. Yeah, you see it on full display. It's interesting that it was a symphony project, but the symphony is really like, again, not just the 96 musicians, but as you're saying, there's a copyist in Toronto who is literally taking each part and writing out the music so that that music could be printed and then sent to the Czech Republic. And I mean, just absolutely extraordinary. So we're in your debt for your gift to capture all those moments because it's worth telling. And I think that's part of what's so exciting and why I'm so grateful that you said yes to the project, because we forget that it matters to do things and to do things with excellence that point beyond themselves. And there's a scripture that says, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it to the glory of God, but do things, not just the outcome or the product that you're making, but work together in a way that points beyond us and
Yeah.
says that God exists and that we matter and that he is good. And artists help us lead the way back to participating in things like that. So deeply grateful for your participation uh, in the project. It is just awesome, and I can't wait to share the pictures. Before we run out of time, I want to shift to some just practical encouragement for. I just had dinner with some friends last night, and I asked one of them "Are you what type of artist are you?" And she did not think of herself as an artist, and it came up later that she's a beautiful and talented singer and has an amazing voice. And but that first inclination for all of us is like, well, I don't know what my art is. I don't know if I'm an artist. And you've had the decades to kind of refine your craft. But for somebody who has been picking up a camera, or they've been noticing that they enjoy capturing stories and capturing videos and little moments with their families, you talked about making the mundane beautiful. And right after that, you said something about framing and lighting. And just really quickly, you talked about some of the elements of the craft. If you are talking to somebody who's thinking, like, I want to grow in my capacity to capture those moments, what are just a few creative things that you think about when you're taking pictures that you can encourage somebody, hey, go practice this when you're going out and taking street photography or shooting your family? What are a few things that you could encourage people to do that might help them capture more life and beauty in the things that they're taking pictures of?
Well, let me maybe start with what you kind of mentioned in the beginning of this is what would I encourage to maybe I'm gonna imagine like a 15-year-old who's just picking up camera and maybe not many people around you are doing it. I would say the main key to that is just do it. No one, it might be just for you, but it is you getting better, and it's the craft, and it's, as you were saying, it's all for the glory of the Lord. It is worship. So I would say even if you don't have the support system around you, maybe to do it, literally your phone, cheap camera, that is the way you will love doing it, and you will love it the same way that you have a small camera, same way you have an expensive camera. You're not going to love it more because of the expensive camera. It is the love for that is already in you, and you need that just to let that go, to express that. So don't wait for the big opportunity to start. That would be the first thing. And the second thing is you were kind of saying about the creativity and framing and light. Just look at the nature and look around you, I would say. And be bold, like be intentional with other people. If you have a passion to capture other people, um, and I look back into my past, and it's like you want to take good photos of people. Well, then maybe that means you need to ask them, "Hey, can I borrow you for half an hour? We will do a photo shoot for free, and we will just practice, have fun together." And that also creates more space for discussion, for community. Take the proactive way to that, and don't just wait for a big project to land into your hands. But like, hey, through that photo shoot with your friend, you could have a good chat. That builds a long-term friendship, and that could grow into something more. it is good to connect and be proactive with other people. Uh, and then, as I said about inspiration, just look at Pinterest and look at the nature and listen to some good worship, and I believe like you will see things in a different way as well.
Yeah. It's that's such a great, we always talk about vision up, like we say the vision is Jesus. Look to him, look like him, and you're going to look with him. And that he literally changes the way we see the world. And our vision is attuned to the beautiful things in the world, the good things that we can celebrate, and we also start to notice brokenness, and we see things that are not the way they should be, the way they ought to be. And you start to develop a sense that I see those things. And then you see with like a redemptive vision of I see hope, I see possibility, I see things that I hadn't seen. But all of that comes from really this deep union with God that changes us and transforms us. And I think that's the most striking quality of about you as an artist. You have the craft, you have the artistic gift, you disciplined that craft over time, but you also have a way of seeing that is shaped by your deep relationship with God. Take me back to kind of the significant moment of surrender for you where you knew that we always say like apart from you we can do nothing, but our life really does transform because of relationship for God or with God. When you take me back to the moment in your story where that became real for you and you really surrendered and said, you know what, it's not just a theory in my head or somebody else's faith, but for me to be who I was made to be really is going to flow from my relationship with God.
Oh, there's probably a few moments like that in my life. I would say the surrender moment would have been definitely kind of, oh, that's a good. I don't know where exactly that would be one of those moments. As I said, when I was growing up, kind of finishing up high school, I had this urge, not even urge, it was like from me crying out loud to the Lord, hey, I want my flatmates to know you, the Lord. I know to like, because in Czech there's not that many Christians. Like me and my one friend, we were the only Christians in my whole class. Um, and I had my passion for media, and I had my passion to, I would say, just let's just say media, and I wanted to use that skill to reach other people. But I would say in those moments, exactly like, if it's just the media, that's not going to reach them. It is the friendship and it is the Lord that is going to change their lives. So I think that would be the main points of like, hey, career second in a way. Yes, my craft as well, but surrender that. And I would say also one more moment is actually kind of towards the end of 2022. So just quite recently, is because I took a break from media because I was like, "Oh, I don't want to do media. It's just ministry. It's just computer stuff. I don't want to do that anymore." But in those moments, actually, like few months after, it was the Lord again reminding me, no, actually, I called you for this, and don't let like some past hurts or some past. It can be like in a way good reasons. It's okay to take a break, but also surrender your calling, like accept the calling the Lord has given you, and deal with that unrest with Him, and not through avoiding that. Um, I would say that was also kind of a process for me to realize, hey, I want to do this because I know the Lord has called me into it, and I can deal with my emotions with the Lord and not just avoid this whole area, because I would be just running away not only from my calling but also from the Lord.
Mm. I love the way that you're describing that. I think that happens to a lot of us that God's given us a gift and over time we get tired, we get burnt out, we get weary, and we go, well, I've got to set that aside. There's got to be something else that's bigger and more potent for me to go pursue. And not always, but often the thing that God has given us that's been there the whole time, it's that is a part of what he's called us to. and for it, and it becomes the thing that carries us into the big story that God is inviting us to participate in. And that was certainly the case in if you had set aside your craft and walked away from it and not, we would never know each other. And it was that skill, that gift, that artistry that God had given you that allowed us to then become friends and to work together, to partner together. And who knows where that'll be. We gave our toast and said, here's to what we can't yet see, right? We don't know where this symphony project will go, where the photo book will go. We don't know all the impact downstream, but we know that we're friends. We know that we've been able to partner together in something, and that's a tremendous gift. We wouldn't have that if we weren't using the gift that God gave us. So I love
Yeah.
that.
One of the last thing to add to that is that surrender of, hey, my media is not who I am. I'm, child of God first. That identity, when you surrender your works and you kind of realize that they don't matter a part of the Lord, all your pride disappears. So for me,
Mm.
I like having getting a good job done, excellence, but I don't take really pride in that. For me, it's just the Lord has made me this way, and this is my worship back to Him. Here's my hands, here's my feet, use me where you want me. But I don't take pride in and control over that as well, you know?
Mm.
So
That's such a, I love the way that you describe that. Constantine said something really similar about the way he writes music. He said, the best music comes when I literally sit down and say, God, I just want to be an instrument for you. I take away my ego, take away my motives and agendas. Just let me be an instrument that's used to glorify you and point beyond myself. And he literally said, when I take control and I try to make something else happen, that's when it deteriorates. So it's an art, right? It's an art to participate, to follow God, and we're just grateful for the chance to know you and get some time like this behind the scenes to get to know you as a friend and let people in our community hear from you. The other thing that I wanted to ask you was, we're trying to grow in our capacity to care for artists and to encourage them and to cheer them on. At V3, we have a deep conviction that leading with beauty is going to be a part of how we help recover just the life and beauty of the gospel being embodied in people's lives in a world that has forgotten in so many ways who we were made to be. And so artists are playing a particularly important role and will in the future. And we haven't always done a great job of recognizing that those gifts that God has given to the church and encouraging artists. So, as an artist, what are just a couple things that you would say to all of us listening, how we can grow in our capacity to support and encourage and really be in the corner of artists in meaningful ways, right? Significant ways that matter to you as a person and an artist.
well, first of all, I would say just tagging the photographer in the profile photo. That's the running joke, right? But no, like genuinely, like this is the
That's
joke that
great.
all the photographers have. Like they just cheer on whenever they're like they use their profile photo that they've sent. You know, I had that as a kid. I loved it when I could make a photo of a friend, just send that to them, and they would tag me. That was the happiest. You know, I was the happiest. Because after all, the artists, they need the exposure to get the work and make that a living. It's not always easy. The same goes with musicians. I know a lot of musicians who have to take side jobs because they just can't make money with the music. So just kind of supporting them through the letting and helping them get jobs in the branch. That's kind of also what I know people. And for me, it kind of what I love when it comes down to photography and kind of working with other people is just getting them the time to get to know the person. Then it's less of a it is teamwork after all. So it needs. Let me rephrase that. Um, whenever I'm like working within a project, it's good that then my English is not Englishing today. Uh,
Mine does that too, so don't worry about it.
I was a few days ago, I was talking in German the whole day, and then I had to switch to Czech, and it just wasn't working. That was my home tongue, you know. Uh, so I would say just kind of the conversation, and then kind of knowing that you care about the photographer, that not just um especially when it comes down to like events and stuff, it can be sometimes quite quick, but I love the conversation. All that to say, I just love conversation. Uh, Supporting artists. Could you ask that question again for me?
No, I think, well, I will. I think you covered it though in the like getting to know you and then give credit where credit is due and then share the work and really advocate. But yeah, just that the heart of the question is we want to be strong allies and advocates for artists. And I think one of the hopes we have, even with Lab the podcast, is for all of us from a community of Christians who see just the importance of the work that you're doing, we maybe have not attended to that as well. And we want to recover, like, hey, we're going to be thoughtful about this community and pray for this community and encourage this community. So, the real and practical ways that we can do that, I think, matter. Sometimes we can just go, well, buy their art. You know, that's the easy thing to do or say. But I
Yeah.
remember we were talking to Brooke Lidgertwood, the singer, and just
Mm.
asking her, how can we pray for you? And for her, it's like, we don't, she doesn't need anything from us, of course, but it does matter if you have people who say, I see you and I know you, and David gave us the chance to know him. And so now we can pray for you, or maybe we can do something else for you as an artist. So that was the heart of the question.
Okay. Like,
Yeah.
then I would say also just when you're an artist and the other person does a good job of storing that gift, as I mentioned, kind of the admin person and the artist, the best way the admin person can honor that artist is to actually then have the photos, publish them in, all the way, like kind of share the gift, share the craft, So I love when there's like when you take a photo and it doesn't just end up on the Google Drive forgotten, but you actually then show it.
uh,
And it takes some discipline, it takes some good organization to then actually let the world see it.
yeah. I think that's a fantastic encouragement that it doesn't end up on a Google Drive. And this goes back to your earlier point. It's hard to do stuff. It takes effort. It takes time and organization. But artists want to share the life and beauty that God's put into them and pouring through them. And if we can help build those bridges and connections, brings glory to God. It's good for the world. So, David, thank you for giving up time. I know I've got to be careful with your time, and I want to leave one last second just to say again, where can people find you? This is what was amazing, and I love this about the network. We found you through Ecstasis, and then we happened to be coming to your neighborhood, but you're working all over the world. If somebody wanted to reach out and not just get to know you as a person, but also your art, or reach out and hire you, you've done work in the United States, you've been here for long stretches at a time. Where can people connect with you if they're interested in your work or possibly partnering with you down the road?
Thank you for letting me plug my website in. And it's just so I've just, as I said, as you said in my bio, I just work right now in mostly in marketing, but I want to get more into the documentary and more into, I think I mentioned to you, like, my dream is to become a filmmaker, documentary traveler. That's kind of what I've kind of come up with right now. But I love documentary missions. I was deeply inspired by some of the movies that I saw. Um, and my website, but I do all sorts of media. So my website is davidzvonar.com. That's probably the best way. There's links to my Instagram. There's links to my so there's my email on there. So just David Zvonar, ZVONAR.com. Um, I'm that's me kind of on a web page.
I love it. Okay, here's what to pay attention to. Sehnsucht film documentary is going to be coming out soon. You'll see some images and see the story that we're just talking about with David that he documented. And then hopefully this year there's going to be a photo book that comes out that points directly back to David's work, and we'll get to share that. So
Wow.
uh, Riley's going to put that link in so you can find David and his work. But David, thank you so much for the friendship. It's just
Thank you.
ongoing. We always say, here's to what we can't yet see. So we'll catch up with you at the next stretch. But thank you for everything. You really brought this project to life in a really beautiful way.
I'm excited. I'm excited for you to come back to Europe. You kind of miss it
Yeah,
here, huh?
I can't
Good to
get
see you.
back there quick enough. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'd love to get back your way.
Awesome. Good to
Yeah,
chat with you.
take care.